All right, we're going to take another look at the skills lesson plan. This isn't an easy thing to do, but also know that teaching is not an algorithm. You must understand the principles behind some of these ideas so that you can engage in high load transfer. That means you understand the principles that we describe in class and you're able to transfer and use that skill in another situation. An algorithm is a step-by-step formula that leads you to a specific answer, like mathematics. These are called well-structured problems. A heuristic is a general set of principles that will lead you to an answer. An ill-structured problem, just like real life. All the information is not going to be there. That's real life, that's classroom life. So in your classroom, very rarely will you have well-structured problems. You will have ill-structured problems. So you have to understand these principles. 4 parts in the basic skills lesson plan. You see them there. Do not use behavioral objectives. Why? Learning is a cognitive endeavor. Behavioral objectives tend to become too assessment oriented, and I'll explore that in a minute. But in my experience, real teachers think in terms of cognitive objectives or purpose statements. Let's see, what do I want to teach here? So a purpose statement is one sentence. What do you want students to learn or learn about? Everything that follows should support that purpose statement. If it doesn't, get it out of the lesson plan. Now, some examples for the word identification skills that we are using. You can see them there. Students will learn how to use word parts to identify unknown words in print. That is the purpose statement. That's the purpose of the lesson. You can see some examples for study skill strategies. Students will learn how to use the study skill strategy, read, dot, and record. That's my purpose of the lesson. That's why I'm teaching it. That's what I want students to learn. Cognitive processes related to comprehension. Students will learn how to predict. That's a cognitive process, a process. I need to break it down into steps. And you can see those there. Other examples of cognitive processes related to comprehension, and this is related to the graphic organizer. Students will learn how to use a predictograph, a comparison chart, a cause-effect graph, or a support a statement chart. I want them to be able to use that. Now, before you begin planning, you have to understand the skill and how you might use it or it might be used. These are all processes that we're teaching here: word identification, study skill strategy, or a cognitive thinking process related to comprehension. So you have to ask yourself, what are the steps? You need to do some thinkerating here. It's not simple cut and paste and find a template and just insert the idea. You are going to have to think a little bit. The input part of a skills lesson, that's list or outline form, abbreviated sentences, so you can easily see the structure and sequence of what you are going to tell your students. Turn off the stinking automatic outline function. That really disrupts the margin. This is where you present everything you are going to tell your students, everything they need to know to achieve your purpose. Information they will know, and it has to be in your lesson plan. If you're going to have questions, include them here. Use kid language. During the input, a brand new skill, you have to explain it, but then you have to model, demonstrate it. These are the steps. Watch me as I do it, and you are thinking out loud. We call that cognitive modeling. You have to use a visual of some sort. PowerPoint, Smartboard, Prezi, and your lesson plan should tell us this will be on the board, this will be on a poster, this will be on a PowerPoint. Let the reader know. If you're using a PowerPoint or Prezi, you can cut and paste very easily, shrink it down right onto a Word document so that lets the reader know exactly what you're doing. Now remember, if it's organized up here, it's going to be organized out there as you teach the lesson. Now here's an example of support a statement. This is a cognitive process. Identify exactly what you want students to be able to do. Given a declarative sentence, find ideas to support it. For example, In the movie Wizard of Oz, Dorothy was brave. Here are all ideas that support that statement. That's an example. Here's another one. Dorothy was evil. These are all ideas that support that statement. Then I have to decide what are the steps. Now, the steps vary. It would be nice if there was a universal set of steps, but I have to break it down and decide the steps that I think are important for this cognitive process. And here are the steps that I have decided. You may have slightly different ones. You look at the statement, look for clues, and a clue is a text idea that supports that. List the clues and then review. Does that make sense? Does it support? These are the steps. And watch me as I do it. I would also introduce a graphic organizer here, used to organize thinking. How should it be used for teaching? Input, guided practice, and independent practice. So think about that. If you're using a graphic organizer any place, it should be in all three places: the input, the guided practice, and the independent practice. What is the end state? At the end of the lesson, I want students to be able to see a declarative statement and add 2 or 3 supporting details. That's the end state. Now, I do not use behavioral objectives because it becomes too assessment oriented. Behavioral objective. Students will demonstrate mastery by looking at supportive statement and no, that's too. Assessment is not the goal when I teach a skill, and I can hear you whining. Well, how do you know if learning has occurred? First, I'll say stop whining, and then I'll say assessment will occur another time, another day, another way. The goal is to teach and practice. Mastery of any skill never ever occurs with one encounter. Mastery occurs over time through repeated exposure and practice. So it's absolutely silly to think that you're going to assess every lesson that you teach or every skills lesson. Assessing is like taking soil samples. You collect little bits along the way. Tangent. I have to ask myself, do I want to do this as a pre-reading, during reading strategy, or post-reading strategy? Pre-reading would be look for ideas that support the statement as I am reading. I would introduce it ahead of having students read the particular text. I could do it as a post-reading, have them look back. It does not matter because we are looking at developing the cognitive process. The goal is to automatize or automaticity. Automatize the cognitive process. We teach the process to develop the skill so that students do this automatically, looking for ideas and supporting statements as they read. Guided practice, structure with a gradual release of responsibility. Upside down triangle with more of you at the top and less of you at the bottom, and I'll show you exactly what that is. But it should be like benchmark baby steps to get them to that independent practice. Nice visual. At the beginning, more teacher, less student. At the end, more student, less teacher. Gradual release of responsibility. Now, for this cognitive process, I would need to find a story, short story, or a paragraph, or create my own. And in the lesson plan, I need to identify the specific story, paragraph, etc., what I am going to use. This is not an abstraction. It has to be very specific. Here's an example of structure. As a pre-during reading activity, I would include one statement. And in this section, I'm going to say to students, as you're reading, there's 2 ideas that support it or make it true. Let's see if we can find them. I give them 3 ideas in the idea bank, and only 2 of them supports the statement. So this is an example of creating structure. More structure, less student. Now, gradual release, baby steps. I'm including a statement, one idea from a word box, only one of these makes sense, and the other one they have to find by their own as they read the next section. Structure 3, a little less. Read the next section. There's the statement. Read silently. See if you can find the 2 clues. Check with your partner. See how I'm gradually releasing some of my responsibility, the structure. I'm able to walk around and listen and watch, a type of a formative assessment. And number 4, baby steps again. Read silently, find the clues. The teacher walks around and checks. 4 types of practice. I'm providing a scaffold as students are reading, and it enables all students to practice the skill and stay actively engaged. Take them all through it together. And it is a type of formative assessment to see if they're getting it, but that is not the purpose. The purpose is to practice and learn. Imagine that. More student, more teacher, less student, more student, less teacher. Independent practice is practice. Reinforce, extend, practice or apply their learning. Practice, practice, practice. Practice, you don't do it once and quit. You have several times kinds of practices. So the purpose is not to assess. Independent practice should not be to assess. It's to practice, practice, practice what they have learned. 95 to 100% success ratio. All students should be able to do it because it is practice within their zone of proximal development. Often, independent practice looks very much like guided practice. And you want students, or they can also practice by applying the skill in an authentic activity or reading activity. Now, for my independent practice, it might look something like this. We took baby steps towards that. So in section 1, there's a statement. 2, 3, 4. They have to then find 2 clues to support each statement. If I did my job, 95 to 100% success ratio. If I have students that are struggling a little bit, I could provide a word bank for some students as well to make this a multi-level learning experience.